This is Creativity Drill with Dr. Don and Jonathan Rundman. Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening to one of our very earliest podcasts. Our guest today is Kelly Newcomer, who's an incredible painter and designer and all-around thoughtful human being. And I think you're really going to enjoy our conversation with Kelly.
It's copyrighted. Okay, let me get you guys a picture of
Okay.
the setup.
We put the headphones.
This could be on your blog.
Yeah, email it to us and we'll put it eventually.
Let me see if the lighting is good. I think so. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Awesome.
So you can sit there and then talk in front of that circle.
Oh my gosh.
That little circle.
It's-
And if you
it's
want
kind of
if
weird,
you want the
but-
monitor, you can put the headphones on, which are there or
I
not.
think that would make me uncomfortable because
Okay.
I would hear what I really sound like.
Okay. Yeah, you're totally
I'm not
cool.
used to that.
So
You sound
just-
good. You sound
just
good.
Talk like even closer to the mic. And then Dawn and I have to share this
We'll share
one,
this
so we're
one.
going to be kind of leaning over.
All right, you guys. I was thinking about stuff like, challenges to creativity and what Michael said, different things, on my way over here.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can go any way you want with this, and that's what's fun about it. So,
All right.
but we definitely have some stuff we want to ask you because we're fans and we know about your work. But
From a long time
And
ago.
Jill Braithwaite now.
Yes.
That's so
When you were
awesome.
talking about doing that at your church, I thought I've got to make that connection because I know that's where she goes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should have Jonathan come and play sometime. How do
Yeah.
people do that? I
Just
don't know.
email.
Talk to him. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm available.
You can talk to our people.
Yeah, you've
Oh,
got
yeah.
We'll talk
you've
to
got a
his
musician, right? You've got a music
Yeah.
director of some kind.
Yep.
I just had lunch with her today.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
To talk about her job and
Cool.
her master's degree that she's finishing and
Yeah.
just everything all at once. And she's finishing her thesis, but she's also has to do an art class.
Oh.
So a lot of it's piling up because then she also has this job. So anyway,
Yeah.
that was a fun connection when I saw that you were one of 2 mutual friends on
Oh yeah.
Facebook. I think she's awesome.
Yeah.
She's so smart and doesn't take crap from anyone.
Is she a colleague of yours at work?
Yeah.
Yeah, now she
She's
is.
really-
She used to work at that other place, Learner.
Yeah, she used to work at Learner in Capstone.
Another publisher.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Anyway.
she's very good.
Yeah.
So-
I can't really see Dawn. I'll have to
I know.
look
Well,
at you with
I'm
one eye.
Like one.
Yeah, but you should get even
One
closer,
second.
Kelly.
Okay, like this.
Yeah.
Yep,
Alright.
yep. You can just.
Oddly
and
enough-
also we got beverages, so
Alright.
you can
Do you
have.
want something to drink?
Yeah.
A sparkling
A
wine?
pink one.
Okay, you can get the pink one, and then should I get you some ice? Do you want some ice?
No, I don't need ice.
Okay.
Look, it's nice and cold.
I'm gonna have some
It
too.
is.
Dawn, can I have the green one?
Can you hear that?
Yeah, that's cool. In fact, if we record the fizz, it's gonna be special effects.
Oh yeah, I'll try not to drink it too fizzy.
Oh yes. Dawn opens it like 2 inches from the mic.
All right.
You guys are so funny.
This is one of the early episodes. You're like a third interview we've taped, and we're kind of getting a few episodes in the can before we launch it. So then we'll put maybe 3 or 4 up and launch them simultaneously, and then our challenge is going to be to keep going. And
Do you guys really need to do it at your kitchen table? You couldn't do it over the phone with somebody somehow? I mean,
Well,
know.
we want to do it in person.
I see.
So-
to get that special
Yeah.
spark.
And it's
Yeah.
more fun. We totally could do Skype. I really like Skype and how I like how Skype sounds. It sounds even more natural than a telephone to me. But as far as doing the podcast thing, we really want to get human beings in the same room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the Runman style.
It's our style.
Yes.
We're developing our style as we go.
So you two are going to share that, Mike?
We are.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And oh man, well we're glad you came. This is super fun. I don't know
Thanks.
when it's going to launch. Maybe sooner than later. Maybe in April or something.
Yeah, we want to launch it soon.
It's got to be. And our goal is maybe we could do 20 before the end of the year, just as a bullseye to shoot for.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So maybe one every couple weeks we put up a new one.
Yeah.
And we're inviting a whole bunch of different kinds of creative people, and eventually, so far we've had a couple authors, but it'll be cool to have designers and musicians and
Artistes.
filmmakers,
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
Painters.
So lots of possibilities. So while we're talking, I'm going to kind of have to work this computer a little bit, but no big deal. Well, hey, you know what we should start with? We were remembering where we met you and that we have Eugene in common. But it was Dawn, actually. And
I get to claim you.
For our listeners, that we're talking to Kelly Newcomer, who's a designer and a painter and one of our favorites. And we've been a fan of hers for a long time. So maybe you should. How did it happen? You were getting your dissertation.
I was in Eugene for about 6 weeks. In the summer, it was 99.
Oregon.
And in Eugene, Oregon. And so I was staying in this house with, it was sort of this community living facility. And there was a woman there who had tickets at the Halt Center. I do not even remember what performance it was. But she was kind of anxious. And so even though the Halt Center was probably a 10-minute drive from where we lived, she wanted to get there an hour and a half early.
You know, sometimes going to a new venue, you could get lost.
Yeah. She was really, and so now I'm so glad. I'm so glad because when we got there and, got in with our tickets and that sort of thing, we had a lot of time before we had to be seated. And there was the exhibit with you and with, was it Faye Nakamura?
Yeah, Faye Nakamura.
And you, and so they had done a beautiful kind of juxtaposition of your work. And I can just remember being in the gallery there and just so affected by your paintings.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, her work is it's ceramic and it's inspired by Matisse. So there's like flowing lines painted on platters and hand-built slabs, like tiles and vases, and really colorful and really like Asian lady with flowers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then my work was really inspired by stuff from like a Japan point of view, like Hello Kitty or cute little logos and kind of technology imagery. So we both had, and even though she was Japanese in origin, but she was from Hawaii, so she was American citizen and everything. But we were both inspired by Japan.
So you would have had an opportunity to connect with her beforehand, before the exhibit, and then probably during. And what kind of work did you keep following her work afterwards?
So I can't remember if it was before the exhibit or soon after that Faye had an open studio. And she has a beautiful home in Eugene, Oregon, kind of near the University of Oregon, and it's just got like a wood floor, tons of windows. Her art studio where she does her slab-built ceramic vases and platters and bowls and things. And so she had a sale, and I got to buy a piece of hers that's really quite large, like 15-inch diameter serving platter, and it's got a woman inspired by Matisse with that kind of brushstroke that he's famous for, and she did it in her own way with, slip trailing and all kinds of neat ceramic glaze, techniques, and she had a really fun opening. I got to know her better just at our own opening and then at her open studio. But then I kind of lost touch with her, so I should actually... That's one of the fun things, is like being on LinkedIn or something and then following up with a real... Well, I guess like a real card or email and just checking in.
Yeah. Well, it was very memorable for me, so I could not tell you anything about the music that was performed that night, but I remembered your paintings.
Yeah, the Halt Center is known for ballet, opera, all kinds of cultural events.
Yeah, I think it was a symphony that, a string ensemble that performed. But so we met then, and then I felt very compelled to follow up. And so I bought my first piece of art ever from you.
Yay!
And that was really fun. And then I got another piece.
Red and blue?
That was a birthday present from Jonathan. So I bought new modern appliances.
Oh yeah.
And
then
kind
of pastel.
Yeah. And then the next year when I finally defended, then I bought another piece. And
defended your dissertation.
Yeah. That was my
doctor.
One of my rewards. And then Jonathan bought me the red and white toy robot.
Oh yeah, that one. That was in your office.
Yeah.
And then I was on tour on the West Coast, and I played in Eugene, and then I made that appointment with you, and I came to your house to see your paintings at your house because I got Dawn a birthday present. That must have been the small one.
I lived in 3 different houses, and I was married to another artist and then got divorced from him, and that's part of the whole story. But I can't remember where I saw you. Was it like
Maybe I came over to Springfield.
Yeah. Was it a weird house with Sean, or was it a little apartment?
No, it was a house.
It was the house.
Yeah.
It was the artsy house.
Yep.
Yeah. We had a little dog, pug dog.
I don't remember the dog.
Well, you had, it was the only place your work was viewable. And so I think you took out, I don't know, 10, 15 pieces for me to check out of all different sizes. And then I picked the one that I liked. And then, I don't know, did I surprise you, maybe?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So at that point, we had 2 or 3 of your paintings in our house.
Yeah.
And this is before any of us ever relocated back to Minneapolis, because we were living
You went
in
to Chicago, yeah.
Right. And you were in New Mexico.
Yeah.
For-
But then I ended up, oh my gosh.
Well, and so just following your work and sort of where you were, the thing I remember about you going to New Mexico is that you had you were there on a fellowship.
Yeah, that's the Roswell Artist in Residence program.
Right, a residency.
Yeah, RAIR.org. And they give artists the gift of time, and that's a year in a house and a 1,000-square-foot studio. And it was 6 or 5 artists getting the grant, and then you also get money you get stipend, and for each dependent that you're bringing, whether it's kids or partner, you get more money for them. And now they bring in 12 artists a year because oil's been doing really well, and Donald Anderson is the patron, and he just pays for it every year, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, I remember you talking about that, and you had the brochure, and the brochure said something like, ask any artist what they want more of, and they'll always say time.
Yeah, the gift of time, the Roswell Artist in Residence program.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. What how did that affect you as an artist, as a human being, as a creative soul?
Oh, yeah, that was
when you were there?
way up there with I went in college, I went to Italy for a year, and that was major. And then going and doing art for a year in Roswell was also just so great. And, it's hard to get back up to that level. And I know some artists that have done the Roswell year for 2 or 3 times. Or I've heard about people that have done it 3 times, and I've definitely met people that have done it twice. So it's like such an incredible opportunity. And, You can't believe. Also, it's a major boost to my confidence. So I look back at that when, here in Minnesota, I told Jonathan about this. I'm applying for the Minnesota State Arts Board Artist Initiative Grant, and you should too.
Awesome.
And, every time I apply for something like that, I think, and, this is a technique that I learned. I think it's just sort of a confidence technique. You think back upon things that you've been successful at, so that if you ever have that little voice in your head that's a naysayer, you can defeat that by just bringing to mind times when you've been successful, And yeah, that's way up there.
When you applied for the grant in Roswell, what kind of pieces did you send to them when you were? What did you pitch to them in the hopes that you'd get the fellowship?
Well, just like what you guys bought, I can't remember if one of your artworks was on there, but it was a really smooth, kind of like a computer illustration style of little characters sort of floating in space and really bright colors. But it was, of course, it was hand painted in oils or something on canvas. So, they projected slides, and you have to send in like 10 or 12 images and a resume and some references. But I think it's just the luck of the draw, really, who is seeing your application and if your art's appealing. And I thought, my art's appealing because it's colorful and fun. But then I went and listened in to one of these other things with the Minnesota State Arts Board, and you can listen. And I'm still trying to, receive that grant, which is like $10,000. But it's a really great opportunity that Minnesota artists can get, and they fund 20% of the applicants.
Wow.
So that's
pretty good.
Better than the lottery.
Pretty good odds.
And yeah, so anyway, one of the guys said, "Oh, well, her art is certainly very colorful." Like that was a drawback, So you just never know who your jurors are going to be.
Yeah. Well, can you talk about your art, the themes that have been part of your art? And as we were talking about this and getting ready, we talked about how when we first met you in '99. You were talking about how you had gone through your donut painting phase, but now you were in this new phase with technology and
I think you were into appliances.
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
When we first met you.
That's right. Because, when I was doing the donuts, I was a baker. And then I started using the computer more. We all started using the computer more in the late 90s. That was the beginning, right, of the internet. And then I was becoming a homebody. In 97 and 99, I was married. So I was thinking about stuff like was it then?
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking about appliances and stuff. And you're right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and then I think, Don, you guys were in Chicago, and you helped me organize that show at Concordia College.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And my brother was living in in Evanston at the time. So that whole show was about, I think it was that machines of loving grace idea, the idea of we're all using the computer so much, and I hope technology can be a force for good in the world.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing about couching that show at Concordia was I got to talk to, the minister, or what do you call like a Lutheran spiritual
Oh, he was the
leader?
chaplain, probably
The
at the college.
chaplain,
Yeah.
the chaplain of the college in the cafeteria, and I just, introduced myself or something, or maybe I met him in the gallery, I can't remember, and he ended up giving a, talk to the, every day he has to talk to the students.
Yeah.
And
a message or
a message, and he said a prayer for them and their use of technology, or something about how it's this great responsibility of us all to, try to. That's exactly what I was talking about. So it's a message that people want to hear. It's something about, let's not create the vision that we saw in that movie, The Terminator. What was that called?
Totally. That's what.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, let's you ever watch TV or read Wired magazine, and it's just like there's going to be these plastic people with robotic knees and brains on ice, and you're going to download their memories, and it just sounds horrible, and like robot pets, and so we need to help the future engineers and designers envision the good positive technology and interacting with humans.
One of my favorite things about your art is that it is optimistic.
Yeah, optimistic.
And I wanted to ask you about that. But before that, I want to finish going through your phases. Because if it was donuts and then appliances and then sort of computers and that sort of thing, then I remember when we all moved to Minneapolis and I came to your house, you were working on control panels.
Oh yeah,
So
I'm
it's-
still working on those.
Yeah.
I've tried a few, and they just didn't. I have this big pile now, like 4 inches high, of work on paper that's in a box called needs work or unfinished.
Yeah.
And those just sometimes you start a project and it just doesn't look right, or it doesn't, I'm sure, sound right, or needs something. So I'm just working away at those.
So there is no new phase past control panels.
No, there is. I've been doing, more imagery about, all the robots are on Earth now. It's more like a landscape. And there's houses, but they look sort of like tents or mud houses, almost like Saudi architecture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I was looking at these pictures of Yemeni architecture, and it's just all tan and white paint and multi-level Adobe, just incredible, fantastical. Looks like a sandcastle kind of a thing. And so that kind of stuff, and then, like bikes and chickens, and, because of our urban neighbors are going around Lake Calhoun with their bike and going home and feeding their chicken in the backyard, and then, so it's kind of
robots and
it's
computers
robots and
doing...
people and animals and
Wow.
cabbages and stuff all together.
Wow.
All together.
Yeah,
That's
because
it.
then I had the children when I came to Minneapolis, and that made me more think about being grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were the first person in the arts that I ever met that could look at their repertoire and, in retrospect, see different phases of inspiration. And I thought that was so cool because, I guess in painting, people talk about that. Like, is it Picasso that had a blue period or something, right?
Yeah, I like to think of my life that way, and I also I understand that humans are storytellers and we like to tell stories, even if our life really isn't that way. And I made some bouquet paintings and vases and just flowers for no reason except to just, make a pretty painting of some flowers, because you need to have those too. And so I tried making a New Mexico landscape. But I like following a theme and sort of having a story, and that seems to make sense for me.
Yeah, I thought that was great, because I think in songwriting or in rock music, I don't hear that kind of talk too much when you look at a band, especially it takes a long time to get enough albums together, enough songs together to look back in retrospect. And, a lot of artists or a lot of bands only last for an album or two or three.
Oh.
So.
But if we don't make it right away, then we have to keep going for 20 or 30 years, right?
Yeah. And it's the artists that have long-term careers that you can look back and see phases. So you can look back on Neil Young or Bob Dylan, somebody like that who's made a lot of albums. And you can say, oh, this was their political phase, or this was their synthesizer phase, or you know what I mean? Or this is when so-and-so joined the band and played the bass, and so that represents a certain phase of their development. But but in the music business or whatever, people don't talk about that as much. So it was so cool to meet someone in the visual arts who was so conscious of the phases you were moving through. And then I thought, I like that idea.
I want to hear how you moved through the phases now.
Well,
Did you have your synthesizer phase?
Well, I think I've got a long enough career now that it's pretty cool to look in retrospect, because I've been doing it for 25 years. And so I can totally see those phases for me. And the early phase for me was totally the geography phase, where the primary motivation or muse was places and geography and, so landscapes and roads and towns and, that kind of stuff. Driving. I mean, that was totally my early phase. And then I think I had a sort of a theology phase. And then I had a phase of Finnish folk music and my roots and that sort of thing. And now I think I'm entering a new period, but I don't quite know what it is. But that Look Up album is the...
Oh, yeah.
You can tell that it's coming out of... There's traces of the Finnish folk music phase in that record and in the artwork and in the aesthetic of the whole thing. But it's also going to a new place. And so I'm wondering, what is my phase going to be in my 40s? Because that's kind of where I am now. So I don't know. Do these phases have to do with your age? Do you think because you and I are the same age, aren't we?
Yeah.
Were you born in 71?
71.
Yeah, me too. Oh, it's so cool. So I don't know. What is it? What do you think about being in your 40s and the stuff you're doing now? Does it ever apply to how old you are?
I don't know how Jonathan gets so much creative output. You're incredible because you're a busy family person who's helping chauffeur the children to things, and and I guess it's because you're just maybe your wheel, maybe your brain's always like this, but so I'm the stay-at-home mom, and I work a little from home on the computer, and just I feel like this is the phase where the creativity is all about making the children grow, and the kids are the ultimate in creativity. And before I had kids, I wanted to not have kids, and I was just going to be busy with my art and go to Berlin and Brooklyn and LA and fly all over and do all these fancy shows. And then I had the babies, and I remember, so I'm with Jamie now, and my ex back in Oregon was a little upset because I didn't seem to spend enough time with him, because I was always in my studio, or I was on the, different committees and things in the arts in Eugene, Oregon, and he kind of thought I should be spending my time with the family unit, which was us, and our immediate social circle, and instead I was sort of branching out more into, I don't know, the world, my career, my kind of individual path. And so now, instead of going up at night, maybe the kids are asleep and Jamie's home, I want to rather watch TV with him, or so this is kind of my down phase, and I'm not spending too much time doing art, but I try to keep doing it. But I'm just totally not concerned with showing and stuff until I get this all figured out and get a grant to pay for that money that I make doing work from home. I just, so important to just be there for the kids, have the dinner around the dining room table, do the rituals and routines on, the weekends, and not just be in my studio for 6 or 8 hours. Because, sometimes that's what you need is 3 hours of creative time to come up with something, right? Or 4
Yeah,
hours.
You got to get in the zone.
You got to get in the zone.
I always talk about how, like, as far as writing songs or recording them, I can't do it in 45-minute blocks spread
But that's
throughout
what
the week.
we have.
That's all we have to work with.
Usually in the daytime,
Right.
before dinner, or when the kids are on the computer or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do agree that, the productivity level goes way, way down. But, it's fun to talk to you because I feel like that's another thing we have in common. We're the same age and we had kids at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And we moved to Minneapolis kind of at the same time. So it's just, it's fun to talk to another artist who's in the same situation, only just in a different medium.
Yep. It's like that theory of multiple universes. You guys are over there in the Lutheran universe in Edina or whatever, doing your thing.
Doing our thing, intersecting with you as much as we can.
Well, even though you're not doing as much art work as you used to do before having kids, you're always doing new things all the time.
Yeah, I have my sketchbook wherever I go, and I got them for my kids, and we've got art supplies all over the house, and I don't like getting all messy with paint at home or anything, but we're always working on art projects. And, their school, they've got things, regularly where, like Arts Extravaganza, it's kind of like a science fair. So I set up my big opaque projector, the type of thing where you can do like an Andy Warhol style. You just, and so the kids draw whatever, and oh my gosh.
That's my phone. No, it's your phone.
Press pause. It's Jamie.
Oh, you can get it. All right, everything's working.
How long have we been talking for?
About 30 minutes.
Awesome.
We usually go about 60 to 90, so we'll just keep trucking.
All right.
Yeah. We sort of started with your phases at the donut phase, but I'm wondering if you can take us back to the world of teenage Kelly.
Oh, teenage Kelly.
And just
Totally.
What was your art like then? What was your creativity like then?
All
Teenage
right.
Kelly?
Well, definitely, at Southwest High School in Minneapolis, taking all the art classes, and one of them was so lame. It was like study hall, and there was all these magazines, and you were just supposed to copy a picture from the magazine. I swear to gosh, that's all we did.
You mean draw with pencil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just draw the purse or the lady or the baseball guy from the magazine. That was so dumb. But then there was another teacher, Mr. Hyder, who actually did more challenging projects. And I always thought I wanted to be an artist like Georgia O'Keeffe or something. But my mom was like, well, it's really hard to be an artist, so why don't you be a commercial artist like my friend Nancy Gardner? And she took me down to the ad agency, BBDO, where her art director friend worked, and showed me the markers and all the cool stuff at the Minneapolis ad agency and everything. So but I didn't want to be using those markers and doing layouts for Hormel products, so that's kind of what I thought commercial art was. But I'd like to do some more commercial illustration. But yeah, I remember hanging out with my friend Kristen Bedeker, who lives near you guys in Southwest here, and she and I would play the drawing game where I would draw one thing and she would draw one thing, but it wouldn't look like a surrealist like monster. It was like all these cute little geometric patterns just sort of splayed all over the paper and different marker colors. It was super fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are your favorite art supplies now to have? Like, do you have a favorite brand or kind of pen or paper you love working with?
Yeah. I love Arches paper, like 300 pound or 140 pound, that super thick watercolor paper. And I love the paints from Oregon, Graham paints.
Oh, okay.
And I learned about those working at the University of Oregon bookstore where we sold those things. And they're just so luscious. And the Graham watercolors are really great. Of course, they come in tiny tubes that cost $12 or $15 each. But they're just so great. So I have some, student level tubes. And I have some of those Graham tubes and just whatever. I have about 40 tubes of watercolor paint. And then my acrylic paint is just getting old. I'm not into that anymore. It just looks too plasticky. And I got rid of all my oil paint supplies when I think when I had the baby, just because even though I was using this Graham paint, they have a non-toxic way of doing oil paint. Instead of using mineral spirits or turpentine to wash your brushes clean, you just sort of dip them in walnut oil and wipe them off. And you have 1 can of dirty walnut oil. But after a day, the pigment goes to the bottom, so you can still use that oil, that same can of oil, for months to clean your brushes with rags, old rags and things. And then you just don't use varnish and turpentine. You just use another kind of walnut oil called alkyd. And you can read about the non-toxic oil painting on the Graham website. But I just am not into that because it takes like a month for those paintings to dry, because the oil dries to a film, but it takes so long. Hair gets stuck in it, and the children would touch it probably. And
Does your art improve if you use high quality supplies?
Yeah.
Really?
I bet it does. Well, the psychology would have to, follow that if you're sort of thinking that you're using the best things.
Placebo effect.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in the placebo effect.
For art supplies.
Yeah.
That's good. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. So if you had an 8 or 10 hour day stretch ahead of you where someone said, Kelly, you must create during this whole time, what would that day look like?
Oh, well, see, I know already, since I had that whole year, that I can't even work in an art studio for that long. I'd have to cook something and walk and, have that time for sort of dreaming or thinking or, maybe read a little. And then that creates open expanse in your life where the ideas can, where you can feel comfortable experimenting or having fun. And, now I have 45 minutes and I say to myself, okay, I want to do something with flowers and and maybe some of these robots or whatever. And I'm just going to try and draw. And I came up with some drawings of flowers that were just sort of weird looking. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Yeah, I'm going to do that with watercolor. It's going to be kind of flowing into the paper, and I'm going to do different. And I sort of have this plan, but it's just, I'd like to have more of that expansive, spacious feeling to my day. That would be great, yeah. That 8 hours would be spread out. There would be, like, visiting with other people, talking, drinking coffee or tea.
That stuff makes a difference. And do you think your time in Roswell, you might not have learned that so clearly had you not had the Roswell year? Yeah,
because I'm a real Protestant work ethic, nose to the grindstone type of person. And I feel like I'm not being productive if I'm not working all the time. But now I know. And Jamie's aunt is a poet, Kathy Y., and she won one of those, in Minnesota we have so many art grants, the McKnight Award, like $20,000 to support her in her art. And she had just gotten her MFA in poetry, and she's just awesome. And so she told me, yeah, you need to have time to, And so I've heard it from other people that I really respect, that you, of course, how could you write a poem for 8 hours? No, you can't. You have to, look up and take a walk.
And you have to remind yourself that it's okay to have that transitional time or that quiet time or that sort of time that doesn't look so traditionally productive.
Yeah,
because you're planting the seeds for the future.
That's right. I bet you that those kinds of rituals that we think about for our kids are just as important in our art. And one of the things I like to do is collect special water. And even the water that comes out of our tap is special because it's from the Mississippi. It's not like we're in some weird town where, you know what their water is? It's gross. It's just treated, over and over. So, but we are so lucky. But if we can, we can go down to the lake. It's so close. All of us live near water. And, here in Minnesota, it's just amazing. And so you can get special water and use that in your paint, or, take a moment before you start to think about why you're doing this, or set special, create an intention or ground yourself before you get started.
Were you always like that when you would sit down to make art, or have you learned that with time to be thoughtful like you're talking about?
I think I've always been kind of like that. I've always been into magical thinking, I think, and just creating a special mood, or, doing interior decorating. So there's like feng shui. So the energy in my art studio, I recently, pulled everything out and dusted everything. And you have to do that sometimes, and then put stuff back and it looks neater. And then then the energy is going to flow better because you've taken care of the,
Your
the space.
Your space has been tended.
It seems to me that even your house in Uptown is kind of like an ongoing art project of yours.
Yeah,
because
it is.
you started downstairs and then you moved upstairs.
That's
and
right.
then you have the new upstairs. And every
That's
time
right.
that I come over, it's something cool is going on.
We live in a duplex. And so right now, Jamie and I are on the second and third floor, and my stepbrother, who's really an artist himself, is a contractor, and he designed that attic space for us with all those cool niches in the... Have you seen it, Dawn? In the attic, there's funny spaces and angles, and so he took the sheetrock and designed little nichos to go back 4 inches into the, between the rafters, and it just looks really neat. And then Jean, my mother-in-law, is on the first floor, and she's got Alzheimer's, but she's got support from the Hennepin County Alternative Care Program. She gets a nurse, she gets a housekeeper, and 2 health aides that remind her to take a shower and can take her on errands. And she gets rides on Metro Mobility, so we don't actually have to do that much caretaking. And this is an amazing program. So we just love having her age at home in our home. We can kind of keep an eye on it all and sort of manage her services and buy her some groceries. Oh, it's great. Yeah.
How old were you when you felt like you made a piece of art that you thought, this is the real thing?
Oh, I think, I was in college taking art classes, and I never really knew what my style was because, they're always giving you assignments like draw this guy, or draw these plants, or do this still life, or do this project with blue and orange. And so then I graduated in cultural studies, which is just about, critical theory and postmodern thought and looking at culture. And then I got out to Oregon and just wanted to do my art and painting and stuff. So, they have like a first Thursday walk to the galleries and stuff like that. And I set up my art on an easel it's like a mall walking street. And, I sold something for like $20, and I had painted something on the back of a poster. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, this is it. This is art.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so Oregon was where it really started
yeah,
happening.
I started really feeling free and accepting my own vision in Oregon.
And Oregon in Eugene in the 90s, my gosh, that was a very artsy, creative place.
Yeah, and you have to remember, because Sean is still out there, he's a very unique artsy person. And I think he's going by the last name of Media Class. And he has had a museum called Feinstein's Museum of Unfine Art, and a nightclub, which I can't remember what it's called. And he does discos for peace, and just all kinds of interesting art events and happenings. And he's a real anarchist. So I say never marry an anarchist, because anarchists don't want to have any rules or anything, and they don't want to be married in the eyes of the state and the law, and they just want to have relationships or something. So for a short period of time, we thought that we wanted to be married, but then and now he's doing his own thing. But that was a real fertile, creative place to be. And Sean was always making art, and he was always making noise music, and we were always hanging out with other artists and going to interesting events. So that was a really free and liberating time for me.
Did you feel like you realized you were a Midwesterner when you went to Oregon? Because that's how we felt.
I don't know. Wow, that's an interesting question. But now, Jonathan, you're from a small town, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from the city, so I don't know. I didn't get that feeling, but I really loved the West Coast, so I knew it was different, but I thought it was too expensive. You know, in the West, in New Mexico, that's affordable for an artist. Maybe not, you know, Santa Fe, that's pretty fancy, but in Minneapolis, you know, you can get a good rent, or, you know, a lot of people can afford to buy a house if they have a job. So out in Oregon and Portland and Seattle and LA and San Francisco, it's just crazy expensive.
Do you ever think that you could live in the Northwest again? Were you way into it?
You know, now that Portlandia has happened, I have a hard time taking it seriously, because I've been back to Portland to visit my good friend Emily, and she lives right in the center of all that stuff, and it's just really weird out there. Have you guys been out there again? Yeah.
I go pretty regularly.
Because I'm from Minneapolis. I grew up here. So, and Jamie did too, and we went to the same high school, and we have friends that we know from, you know, he's in a band with the guy that he was in a band with, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, because, he started that band when he was like 15, so yeah.
Wow.
So do you think you have a Midwestern identity? Or does the urban...
The North.
They
want to rebrand this as the North.
We're the North.
Yeah, what do you think?
I do
buy
feel
that?
like that, you know, because I do feel like I have a Midwestern identity, because my mom is from Iowa, and she was always talking about the Protestant work ethic and how Grandma and Grandpa lived through the Depression, and you have to just, you know, all these people just, I don't know, I guess, I do feel like, and, you know, it's a real white bread type of Midwestern identity. And, you know, we were brought up Unitarian Universalist, so it wasn't like Lutheran or anything like that. In fact, we hardly ever went to church even. But that was in the background because my uncle was the music director at First Universalist at that point. Yeah, so...
I always knew that you were part of that community as an adult, but I didn't know that you had family roots there, too.
Yeah, I actually went there when I was a kid. I'm kind of a lifelong UUer.
Cool. Do you see people there from the old days who you would remember?
I just never went to their youth programs very much, which is too bad, because they actually have a really killer sex education for the 8th graders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's called Our Whole Lives. And they get experts to come in and talk about stuff. They've been through it.
Yeah.
I had herpes, or, you know, you can ask me questions about being gay, or I'm trans, or just they have people come in that got divorced or had, I don't know. I don't know what they do in there. It's kind of secret. I don't want to be one of those teachers in their religious education for Our Whole Lives either. It's too
I
sexual.
love the middle school sex ed church retreat.
Oh, they do one.
That's awesome. Like
you went.
I went as a kid.
Yeah,
and
I missed
thought it
that
was
stuff.
really great, and it was very healthy, I think, and realistic and good.
Yeah.
And our congregation has one as well. In fact, I was just talking to someone about that, and you know, as like in a couple of years, our kids are going to go to that.
Oh my gosh, okay. So sometimes I think, wow, am I going to put some sex into my art? Like, should I do a nude or whatever?
Oh yeah.
And then I never do, because I'm kind of an uptight person. And then I've been listening to a lot of Jonathan Rudman this week, helping, you know, work on your that CD design. And I'm like, out behind the old hotel, Jonathan and Don are like getting it on, and then I'm like, this is about Jesus getting born.
But it totally has the sex verse in it.
Does it? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's the two young lovers. It's,
okay.
It's Mary and Joseph.
But it is Mary and Joseph.
Yeah, but I wanted to give them like a sex life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because humans have sex lives.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny like that you're interested in like putting some sex in your art, because I think that like the Look Up album is my sexy album.
Oh, is that the one with? Because I just hit play and it was playing all the Jonathan. Was that Behind the
It was on
Hotel?
shuffle.
No, the Look Up song that is the first song on the Look Up album is Prioritize Us.
Oh yeah,
And
that sounded like marital counseling there, though.
right, but that's the
that's
the sex.
You gotta have
song.
sex, yeah.
And so
Okay.
if you listen to the
I
lyrics,
see.
in
Oh,
fact,
okay.
the opening lyric of the first song, the first words of the first song on that album is "I want you."
Oh, okay.
So-
well, that's good.
And so I
You guys keep working on that.
and there's more, there's more of that stuff going on, I think, in that song. But as I get older, I don't know how, I'm a performer, and so I get to do my art on stage in front of a crowd, where a painter might not get to, get on the microphone.
Yeah,
and
I'm not
host-
gonna like roll around on the canvas, or I don't even want to do a mural
But-
because that's too hard.
Well, I'm feeling as I get older that like I'm way more like physically, sexually, passionately tied to the art now than ever before.
Oh, yeah, it's important to engage your whole being.
Yeah.
And so I want to bring that that idea of Faye Nakamura back in, because there's this other artist that's kind of like her named Mayumi Oda. And Mayumi Oda is famous for doing these goddess imagery, like a sort of a nude female Japanese woman riding a dolphin in the ocean, and she did one on a crane. And anyway, now Mayumi Oda has sort of one of those organic farms with young people go around the world and work on them in exchange for room and board or something. And it's in Hawaii, and we're going to Hawaii. And I'm like, maybe we could visit Mayumi Oda's art studio and farm. So I was just looking it up, and her son and his wife run the yoga and plan all this more. Mayumi's like 70 or something, and she's doing more meditation and stuff like this. But one of the things they do every day is this yoga thing. And the way I read an article from a local Hawaiian newspaper about what's going on at this farm. And it was a very sexual yoga with these poses. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I do yoga sometimes. And it doesn't usually get into a sexual pose, like that kundalini energy. But there's something about engaging that and not being ashamed of being a human with this whole, the energy of the sexual life or the passions and things like that, in putting that all together. So, wow, I wonder what'll happen. Maybe some of those nude robots, or oh wow, you don't even want to know what they're inventing on that. Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, well, I want to hear what you think about technology some more too, because like I had mentioned earlier, I love the optimism of your work across a long time of ever since the 90s. And I've found that so many people who are kind of artsy people are down on technology. And I've gotten to meet more super artsy people in the last few years of my life. And I find like a lot of them are like, oh, I hate Facebook and I hate my phone. And let's move out in the woods and like have chickens and grow our own food. And like, oh, I hate the internet and I hate computers. And what I love about your work is that you are, I don't know, it seems to me like you're embracing that. And actually, when you read your artistic statement at your webpage, you talk about how, peaceful
That's
technology and robot. I like your paintings are called robot friends.
Yeah, that's what I want to get more into, is kind of embracing that wild idea of what could be the ultimate positive vision of technology. But some of the things about technology, not just people wanting to get rid of their phone, but being afraid of electromagnetic frequencies. We don't really know if there's too many or if they're bad for us. But I heard that in Sweden maybe, or Norway, or one of those countries, maybe it's Finland, that there's these places you can go to and insurance pays for it, so you can get respite in case you have electromagnetic sickness.
Wow.
And some people practice walking without any shoes on. It's called earthing. So that they can get like healed by Earth's energy.
Huh.
And they won't put their cell phone charger or certain clocks in their room by their bed.
Uh-huh.
And it's important to sleep on the ground floor if you can,
Wow.
right on the earth. So there's a lot of thinking about the waves, the energies.
Well, sometimes I get freaked out about that because I use my phone all day, but now my phone is also my alarm clock.
Well, you can be freaked out about that, and you can read all about it. And like that Ecopolitan place by the Wedge, that's where they do the healing for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And people can come up to your house and get it checked out and tell you what's wrong here
Wow.
in this scenario.
Well, I
try not to think about that too much, but okay, you guys, can I just lay this on you? The idea that okay, I want to write this up as a manifesto or something.
Okay.
I believe that the humans and technology have a symbiotic relationship. So always humans have been writing or using tools, and that's like technology. So technology, we've kind of helped technology to evolve. But I wonder if technology really is a spirit, sort of like the devil or a different thing, like the spirit of the Mississippi River, according to, me, that and a lot of other people, that's alive and it has a spirit, and mountains have spirits, and, your house has a spirit, and the toaster. And so why couldn't there be this overarching spirit of technology that sort of, kind of like in those, that bathhouse of the spirit, those movies like My Neighbor Totoro, what's that guy's name? Anyone who's seen My Neighbor Totoro knows what I'm talking about. There's this one guy with all these movies, and then in the bathhouse of the spirits, there's all these spirits, and you could just almost imagine this overarching spirit of technology that's been growing and growing, and in 100 years when we have the like plastic robot knees that are powered, and quadriplegics can walk, and you can download grandma's memories and stuff. Well, it's like, what's the point and everything? And what if humans aren't connecting anymore? Or I think it might be interesting to say, wow, maybe there is a spirit. Maybe we could like make a prayer or something, or do a ritual that's really beautiful. Like sometimes when you want to help think about tending the earth or being nice, you could do a little ritual for taking care of the earth, whether it's keeping a compost pile or whatever. So, and I guess I don't know what it would look like, but I think that there's got to be a way for people who are interested in that to, and I think that they already do it. Like one time I was in Peru, which was an amazing trip, and this one guy, Richard, was like, I understand what you're talking about. So he's talking to all these Quechua Indians from the Amazon. They have all these feathers, and he loves this, and he goes to their festivals. And so he put feathers all over his computer to help protect himself from it or something, like to help bring some of the Mother Earth energy to technology. So I guess I just want to do something that shows that I'm thinking about, it's not just this idea of how humans use technology, but it's this idea that maybe it's a force that's even greater than we know, and it's part of God. It's like part of everything. But I guess I'm still working out the details.
Yeah.
But there's got to be other people out there that are thinking along those lines.
Here's how I've been thinking about it as a musician and as someone who writes like liturgical music is, there's lots of, church music or spiritual music about nature, drawing, the sun and the ocean and the trees and all that stuff. But I thought it would be interesting to write spiritual music based on technology. So have like a hymn about cars or a hymn about your phone.
Well, yeah, because a lot of people say a prayer when they get into the car, and my neighbor imagines these two angels come into her side every time she gets in the car.
Yeah. And so, and at least in our tradition, there's tons of church music or whatever, or spiritual music about the natural world. But there's nothing about the internet, but it's totally a legitimate thing, a part of our lives.
I guess
we
that's
use
what I'm
all the
talking
time.
about, sort of a spiritual yearning to make sense of technology.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Greeks had an idea about this, and I never really dug up that much, but there's a goddess or a spirit called Techne, and that's kind of all I figured out. I think Aristotle wrote about it or something. I don't read Greek.
So it's the root word for technology.
Yeah. I Googled, techne, Greeks, and
Yeah.
I was tired and I didn't come up with much. I'm not the researcher I used to be.
Give it time. Give
Yeah.
it time.
2 weeks ago, I played music in Brainerd, Minnesota, for a retreat of retired men. And I'd never been to anything like that before. Like, I've never hung out with a 50, 70-year-old guys. But
I didn't know that they got together and did that.
I think it's kind of a rare thing. But I was the in-house musician for the weekend. And I actually was not looking forward to it because I don't really relate to a lot of dude kind of stuff. But it was really extraordinary. And then I had to do a workshop. And my workshop was about, it was called like music and vocation. And so I sat at this round table with like 10 guys who are in their 60s and 70s. And I didn't have like a lecture planned, but I had some topics and I was just going to talk about
notes on like a little card.
Yeah.
Well, it was just in my head. And so I talked about my experience as a musician, and man, these guys wanted to talk about Spotify. And they wanted to talk about intellectual property, and they wanted to talk about Netflix, and they wanted to talk about, and they were asking me, because I was saying, how so much has changed since I became a musician in my adult life with technology and the internet, and how art is shared digitally and all that sort of thing. And these guys were asking me, they're like, how is music going to survive as technology gets more and more integrated and art is free and intellectual property is devalued? And I thought, holy cow, I did not expect this kind of stuff to come from that crowd of guys.
Yeah.
But it was super interesting. And I don't know,
they weren't a bunch of retired entertainment lawyers?
That's what they were talking like. They were like farmers and I don't know.
Oh, wow.
They were, rural Midwestern Minnesotans.
Oh, wow.
It was a really wonderful discussion, and they were super interested and totally up to speed on everything. So I don't know, what do you think about the devaluation of
say first the song that you sang in your tribute.
Oh, remind me what that was.
Well,
oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the weekend I was there, Leonard Nimoy died.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Spock had died.
So you had a song
and
in mind?
so there's a really beautiful hymn called How Small Our Span of Life. And so it's in the hymnal, so we all sang it in honor of Leonard Nimoy.
That's awesome.
And so and of course Star Trek reminding us about technology too. And so I don't know, what do you think about the way things are going and how people share stuff and how musicians and filmmakers just don't have control of their
I don't know.
stuff anymore?
I mean, I remember talking to my friend Nathaniel Rowan, who's a real bluegrass type guy, and he makes a living making instruments. And he says that one of the best things about his kind of music is that it's something that's experienced in small groups, and people dance, and so there's this back and forth between the music makers and the audience, and they don't just sit there at the Holt Center or whatever and, appreciate fine music. It's sort of this experience thing for everybody. And so maybe it's getting back to that, how everybody's an artist, and they really are, and now, everybody can do art. I mean, it seems like everybody is doing crafting and special kinds of cooking and special kinds of chicken raising or gardening, and so everybody's really artsy-craftsy, right? I mean, compared to 30 or 40 years ago?
Yeah, or even 15 or 20 years.
I mean, Dawn's mom was a super artsy-craftsy person.
Yeah.
We know that. She's highly skilled. But a lot of our moms and dads were not. They were just,
Yeah.
working and then going out to eat at McDonald's and then watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think people they give themselves more permission to say that they are creative.
Yeah.
Because I think for so long you think if you're not the best artist in your 6th grade class moving forward, you take your couple of required art classes in junior high or high school and then you're done.
You know what? My mom was super artsy though. She's always playing the piano, which I wasn't into, doing copywriting or writing. And we had a very creative family. We even had parties with like music instruments everywhere, and people would just play them, like really bohemian.
Cool.
Yeah.
Were they hippies?
You know, I have a real hippie for our cousin. He's the real deal. He's been a hippie like this whole time. But no, I think my mom's friends were just more like artsy ad people. Yeah, but what were you asking, Don?
Well, just people. I think people giving themselves permission, which I think loops back to when you were talking about thinking back on the things that give you confidence and saying,
Yeah.
I am an artist.
Yeah, it can only be good that thousands more people have heard your music because it's out there on the internet. And it can only be good that all these people are making art and selling it, and there's tons of art everywhere. And I mean, I might not be able to make a living like Georgia O'Keeffe because art isn't as rarefied anymore. Because, people have these tools, and there's YouTube tutorials, and anybody can do sort of, if they want to, they can figure it out and do it.
What are some of the impact stories that you have about your own art where, I don't know if it's a painting or a button or anything that you made that somebody saw or purchased or took into their house or their living room, and then you heard about it after the fact?
I don't know. But the only thing that popped into my head, and nothing really like of somebody, I mean, you guys are my patrons, and you got this art everywhere, and you actually own like 3 or 4 pieces or something. But I haven't heard that kind of story from other people, but I was one time I put my art on a website called Pictoplasma, and there's this really neat website. Yeah, and they're still running, and they've been around for like 10 years, and they collect character art. So, a cute little bunny with a space helmet, and the kind of illustrations that I was making or still make. So, it's all compiled there, and the company, the publisher, puts out books every year, and that's how I got to show my art in Berlin. Anyway, one time some, designer from Siemens was needing artists for a kind of swatch-like project where they wanted to put artists and their biographies and in the packaging, and then put the artwork on the cell phone clip-it cover. And I just thought that was super cool that I got contacted out of the middle of nowhere by somebody that wanted to put my art on the equivalent of a sort of a swatch type thing. And, and then my work ended up going to South America and Africa on this Siemens clip-it cover. And I never actually got one, but I've got a picture. So I just think that was super awesome. And it was one of those kind of like, light blue background with a little red and black outline dude, kind of like the little robot you've got.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that image on your online portfolio.
Oh, yeah.
Portfolio.
Target's been in the news a lot lately because they're having a big reorganization. They closed all their stores in Canada, and I've always wanted, my work to get on some product at Target because being from Minneapolis,
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have so many cute designs that I feel like, why shouldn't my work be on one of those?
Yeah, your art would be really cool, like baby.
Yeah, like on a onesie.
A onesie. Oh, totally. Yeah.
And, I don't know much about that, but that's going to be one of my goals in fact, that's been a goal of mine for a while, is to figure out that whole art licensing deal. And I guess sometimes like when I licensed my work to Siemens, that was serendipity. But that's one of the really neat things about the internet, is that I can just send off a file, and then I put, a couple $1,000s in my pocket. And now I know a lawyer, too, who can help me figure out if this is a good contract. And I've met some people through Springboard for the Arts, which is a local Twin Cities, or actually it's a Minnesota organization that helps artists get professional help on their business careers. Yeah.
You've always seemed to me to be the kind of person who hasn't had a struggle with getting paid for art. Has that ever been difficult for you to sort of marry the creative life with the vocational one, or like paying the bills and and that sort of thing?
Well, I think so, because now I'm doing medical billing for a bunch of psychologists, and I'm basically an accountant, or calling the insurance company and saying, why did this patient get denied? Doesn't, and these psychologists are really great. It's the postpartum counseling center.
Oh.
So they've got people that have anxiety and they can't sleep, and they've had their baby now for 2 weeks and she really needs to sleep, and they've got psychiatrists that are moms that have kids themselves that can help, whether it's and it's a holistic psychiatrist. So anyway, I'm doing this medical billing, and I should be doing my art and working on new ideas and projects, because I need to make a certain amount of money to help pay the bills and bring money into the household. So yeah, I'd rather have it be the art, but it just seems like the stuff on Etsy isn't selling, so I've got to bring in some money somehow. And that neighborhood newspaper that I did graphic design for, well, they lost the advertisers because of the age of print newspapers is drying up. So I just take whatever kind of work I can to fill in the gaps until I get that $10,000 grant or something that will sort of allow me to dedicate 3 hours here and there to my art.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also in order to get that grant, or in order to get a show where I sell some work or sell an original watercolor for $1,000, then I have to make the work. So so there's something about artists collaborating with community, and there's a lot more grants for artists who are collaborating with community than there are for individual artists. Mm-hmm. And there's a way that I believe I can come up with something so that artists who are, creative people who are moms who are struggling to do their creative work again, there's some blockage, whether it's caregiving for someone with Alzheimer's or caregiving for someone with special needs, and I've got both. Mm-hmm. And so I think that and for dads, and people need the gift of time in these chunks. It's like respite care. And it's respite care for artists that are caregivers. And I think that would be a way I could collaborate with community and find some money, maybe from UCare or, I don't know who. Mm-hmm. And then, anyway, going to one of those Springboard for the Arts discussions about how artists can be collaborating with community sort of got me thinking about artists as caregivers and artists who need respite, and how that might turn into some program, maybe 5 years down the road, to help people that are going to find themselves in my shoes when they have a baby, in the future. It's got to change. Yeah.
If you could be an artist in residence at any kind of institution, a school, a hospital, military base, what institution do you think would be really interesting to say, for the next year, my job is I go there and I serve that community specifically?
Oh, I want to be an artist in residence at Nintendo or somewhere like that.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be awesome? And then come up with experiential things and, collaborations and research. I like to look at, their library of images, and I don't know, maybe not at Nintendo, but at the girl version of Nintendo, because I'm not a guy and I don't speak whatever that language is that programmers talk, and but something like that, something where there's a bunch of engineers doing something that's creative and that's affecting millions of young people, and then get in there and have a room.
Have you ever had a gallery show where you've had to speak or get on the microphone at the podium and say, I'm Kelly and this is my collection and here's what it's about?
Oh yeah, I like that.
I think so, because you're so good at being clear as to what you're trying to accomplish, and I don't know. I think it would be fun to. I know that if I went to a gallery show of anybody, I would much rather hear the artist set it up for me before I go look at the stuff, rather than just looking at the stuff.
Yeah, I want to develop one of these kind of PowerPoint talks where you go in and talk about your art, and then you get to see all the imagery and maybe hear some Kraftwerk music at the same time. They have a song about a machine, the pocket calculator, and it's like this love song to a tiny piece of technology that made a big difference in one of their lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
What other kind of art or artists do you see that are like craft work where you think like, this is an artist that's talking about the same stuff that I'm talking about? Do you ever see that on there's television shows or movies? I mean, obviously craft work is an example, but...
Well, like I mentioned before, that My Neighbor Totoro and The Bathhouse of the Spirits, that, that animator...
that was a really...
Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of his work... there's one whole movie about this guy that was enamored with airplanes, and there's always some element of the technological, but it's usually more steampunk, like old-fashioned technology.
Yeah.
And then there's tons of nature. But, there's this two artists whose work I love called Friends With You, and their work is super happy, super pop, super colorful. They live in Miami or something. I think their names are Arturo and I forget. I actually own one of their art. It's in my dining room. It looks like I made it, but it's actually by Friends With You because they showed at that little shop Robot Love, or maybe it was at the Suvac, and the
that?
Robot Love guy helped organize it. Suvac is that gallery on 28th and Lyndale, but they're moving to 29th and Bryant.
Okay.
SOOVAC, the Visual Arts Center, the Sioux Visual Arts Center.
Wow.
It was started by Susie Greenberg, and then she passed away 2 years ago, I believe. And it's a nonprofit, so it's not the kind of gallery where they keep art in the back and represent artists. They just are always putting on interesting exhibits. And yeah, I got to, I'm like, Jamie, I really want one of those artworks. And so then we bought some art, whereas before we did buy some art, but it was always almost like a trade or something like that. Yeah.
Have you told that artist that you have their work in your house?
No, but they came to the Walker Arts Center. They were invited by the Teen Council to give a talk, and that was really inspiring. You can go on to the archives at the Walker and view their talk. You know what they do too that's really neat that I have never done? They get these humongous balloons made, somehow fabricated, and they parade them in a procession down Miami Beach or something.
Wow.
But they look like big, humongous, bulbous clouds with happy faces, or like a big hamburger with a happy face. It's hard to describe. There's just some fantastical creatures, and they all have faces. And the Friends With You artists also incorporate the ritual and kind of magical thinking, spiritualized. It's real weird, kind of shamanic. It's all made up. But there's like a sort of a shrine, and it's actually kind of grotesque. So I don't really understand what they're doing, because it's just kind of like there might be some black patent leather vinyl creature that's 6 feet high that I wouldn't want to worship that guy. So I don't know why they're making a shrine with that guy in it. But aside from that, there's flowers and candles, and it's very interesting. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, you should
sort of inspiring.
You should totally email them and say,
Yeah.
I've got your work in my dining room or whatever. That'd be...
Yeah, I think I will.
I think it's so fun to get to meet artists that we actually have in the house. And, that's why it's fun to have your art here, because we know you. And we made a rule, actually, when we moved to Minneapolis, that we would only have art of people that we know.
Well, what about those posters from Poland? The Polish,
the Polish
those
theater
really
posters.
artsy posters.
Yeah, well, we got those before we
But
made
so
the
we
rule.
have such a connection to those because of our travel. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that one right there is from.
Yeah,
'cause
I
of
love
the
those.
flag colors. Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got some art in my basement that I'm ready to bring up now. It's really grotesque, and it's by my friend Martin Ontiveros, who's a Portland artist, and he does the illustrations for Ricky Ricotta and the Giant Robot. That other book by the guy that wrote Captain Underpants. It's a whole series.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And he's the illustrator.
Yeah. So anyway, because Captain Underpants, the guy that wrote that, lives in Portland.
Okay, I didn't know the author was
And
there.
met Martin at the Reading Frenzy zine store, where I also had a show, and that's how I met Martin. And we traded art, and this work is like a monster giving birth with like the umbilical cord to another monster, and there's like, even though Martin is a dude and he's really into monsters and heavy metal, he's obviously a feminist too, because his work is about babies and birth and all that kind of stuff. And it's in outer space and there's an egg and it's just a little grotesque. But it actually looks like a comic book illustration, but it's like 4 feet high by 2 feet wide, and we never hung it up because it's just so weird. But we have some art actually hanging in our basement too from Roberto Palazzo from Los Angeles, and he's a really great artist, but he went through this phase where he was drawing these naked women with big breasts, and that one's in the basement because
it's not ready for
not ready for prime time.
Yeah. No. I think a lot of people they're scared to buy real art, or they feel like that doesn't, they're not discerning enough, and so they shouldn't have it.
Yeah, I know. I know some people that are professionals. They live in a beautiful house and they don't have any art.
What do you want to say to them?
Oh my gosh, they need to buy some art. You know what they need to do? And I think it's hard because I hardly ever go to galleries myself. But if they would just go to a gallery or two, they might find one that has some work that they kind of like. And then they just let the gallerist steer them to the right, that's their job, is to help you find your style of stuff that would work for you and your family.
Yeah, because I think they're scared of making the wrong choice, or they're scared they're not cultured enough, or that there's just so many
all they have to
barriers
do is sort of choose a couple of galleries to sort of check out, and then they can let the gallerist do the work. And the gallerist has got is in touch with 30 or 50 or 100 artists, and so they know all these people, and they can get almost any of their works for you, and you tell them what you might want to spend, and there's also this website called Buy Some Damn Art, and everything has to be under $400, and they're on Facebook, and they post new work every 2 weeks, and I really love the style. It's just kind of it's sort of modern and airy and happy sort of, and weird. And so there's places like that out there, and it's so easy to buy.
Yeah. As you've talked to people, because hopefully you've gotten the chance to talk to people who bought your art, and it's like it's in their home, they see it every day. People come to their home and they notice it and they talk about it. Like, do you have any stories about what people have told you once your art is now at home in their homes?
I guess I don't know. There's somebody, she always wanted to get one of my artworks, and she couldn't afford. So then she finally bought something small, and it's an original on paper. It's like 5x7, and it's this woman inspired by kind of like Fernand Léger, that contemporary of Picasso's, kind of blocky people, look like from the circus with heavy outline black.
Okay.
And she's holding a bicycle and some flowers, I think. And so Jennifer put that up, and then she told me, and she's a single woman, and she teaches Pilates and is in the theater and stuff. She's really cool. And she has people over, and she's like, wow, people really liked your art. And then she saw me at Art-A-Whirl, and she bought 2 of my, I also do ceramic paint, plates and other hand-built things. I think I was inspired by Faye Nakamura. And I just do black and white, sort of put on black slip and scrape it away so you can see like a white line, or else just do a black line on white clay.
We have a magnet.
Yeah, the magnets,
Of yours that's like that.
Yeah. So she bought a couple plates, and they look like a satellite dish. It's lots of circles and geometric lines, sort of like a satellite dish, but it's just a plate with those designs on the front. And she hung those up on the wall, and she said that she got lots of compliments on them. But usually I think the people with whom I've traded or who I've sold work to, I don't really know who it went to. Because if you sell work in a gallery or something, what's kind of neat is in Roswell, there's that Roswell Museum of Contemporary Art. And a lot of artists who do the residency program end up donating a work there. So I did that. And then I also sold a couple works, my work kind of reasonably priced compared to a lot of the other artists that come through that program. And anyway, so they have, 3 of my works, and or actually more. There was a cardboard satellite mobile where you can make little satellites out of like cereal boxes, and Edie Song, my friend, and I made a bunch and made them into mobiles, and sort of ephemeral art, doesn't last forever. But just to see that hanging up at the Roswell Artist Contemporary Art Museum, and then to see that on like postcard, and see my work in the background, and be like, oh, that's so cool, I love that. It just gives me a fun feeling. Yeah, but most people I don't really stay in touch with. I have a mailing list, and I honestly don't do a newsletter, so I haven't had any news for a while. I have to like send out a blurb about our podcast.
Yeah. Once we post this and it goes live, it would be awesome if you could tweet it and Facebook it, and then I'll do the same for you, and then we can have synergy PR happening out there.
Well, sometimes Jonathan's an awesome organized artist, but a lot of people don't know what to put in their newsletter, so that'll be it's good to have those structured events to.
I always try to arrange things happening, either things that actually are happening, or I try to make things happen just so I have content to put in the newsletter.
To keep touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if nothing's going on, I'll create some sort of event, or I'll make something happen just so I have something to talk about in a newsletter.
Well, that's good. You're really helping your art, because art is like a baby, and you need to take care of it, or like a plant or whatever. And
Art is like a baby. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, about I want to ask you one thing about that too, and then Dawn, you should ask your summary. But when you make, like me, who writing songs and making CDs and downloads of music, like even if somebody buys it and it goes home with them, I still have hundreds of more CDs in the basement, or I still have
unless you run out after 6 or 10 years.
Right. Well, then I'll just repress some more or reissue it. But it sort of never runs out. But for you, like if you make a beautiful painting that's like, even think about the big ones like that we have in our living room. Those are big. And I'm
not going to make those big ones anymore. I don't have room in my basement. And imagine taking that to a show, and building a crate. And I'd just rather make small works.
Well, although, and how long it takes to fill up images on the big canvas.
Well,
it's huge.
All the layers of the color and the shapes, and
that's fun.
But boy, when we look at that and think, wait, she had to know that the light blue one was below the brown one. But the brown one is below the white one.
No, you don't need to know. You don't need to plan that.
Well, but when I I mean, we usually just take it all in. But when we do decide, like, wow, there's 120 or so shapes on here, and they're all layered. Like,
well, you know what? Isn't that inspiring to think of people that do weaving or quilt making without a pattern?
Yeah,
that's really getting into the just the whole. I don't know how they do that. I never did weaving or quilt making, but that's people.
It unfolds on its own, like it's its own creature. It blossoms.
Or like those people that do that dance thing where it's improv and I forget what that's called, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Interplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, but what I was going to ask about, like for example, the big paintings is if you put so much heart and soul and time and whatever into that. And you have it at a show and somebody buys it and maybe you don't know who they were and it disappears. Do you ever grieve the loss of the thing that you spent so much time on?
No, because that's okay. I think it has its own life, and even if it were to get destroyed somehow or by accident, that I don't worry about that at all because it's fine.
Do you try to take a picture of everything?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you always have...
I had the best database, and then I got busy and sort of lost touch. And that's what the websites are, right? That's why my website is so weird, and I haven't done anything with it because it had everything on it.
Yeah.
So then
It was so fun to look through, though.
And I think
your Roswell year, where you.
Why don't artists just put everything on the internet so we can just? I mean, even if it's just back then, I didn't know that we we just couldn't make images bigger than, like 150 pixels wide. That was the max. or I don't know, 300. And now, there's so much bandwidth that we can do so many large images. But yeah, I don't feel bad about that. Nowadays, if I make an artwork that's sort of large, like a whole sheet of watercolor paper that's 22 by 30, I would just scan that in 4 sections, and then I would have a scan.
Yep.
Jamie has a Nikon camera that takes really great pictures, and I could take a photo of it on an overcast day with natural light.
Or you could go to a architecture firm where they have the blueprint scanners, those really humongous
I'm not doing
sheets,
that,
and then you could scan it in its real size. And I always think about that, like, because Pavo and I made some art that's downstairs that's really big. It's like 6 feet. It's on butcher paper, so it's 6 feet long by 3 feet high, and it's more than you could ever scan at home. But I think it's such a cool.
Is it Star Wars?
It's not Star Wars, but it's like science fiction.
Oh, I want to.
I can show you. It's downstairs on the wall. It's pretty cool. But we made it years ago, and he was just a little kid. But I would love to have a scan of it, and so I think I'm going to go to a blueprint scanner architecture place.
Okay, well, if you don't want to do that, you could actually set up a tripod, and you could manually move the camera to the left 3 feet, so you could get 4 close-ups.
Oh yeah.
And then in Photoshop, you can stitch them together.
Oh, that's a good
Especially
idea.
with my art, has a lot of times I have kind of a background and then images in the foreground. It's pretty simple. There's characters and they're floating on a blue sky. And then you can kind of cut with the lasso tool and collage the things together without, if it's not a perfect,
How would you like the millions of people who are going to listen to this interview? How would you like them to find you or to get in touch with you if they find this conversation inspiring?
I'll have to update my website. It's been 10 years. Well, I think that kellynewcomer.com is the best way because it has links to everything, and my most recent work is really on my Etsy site since I haven't been updating my main website because I'm not really able to sit down at the computer for 3 hours and do a website. So I just put the new work on Etsy and
Etsy is
sell prints.
You can shop there.
Oh my gosh,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I guess musicians don't really use Etsy, but you could. I mean, you could sell the pins and the T-shirts and stuff.
Yeah, you can do the merch there. I also saw that you're on Twitter, so I just followed you this week.
Oh yeah, and
Twitter.
I'm on Instagram, but I never take pictures. It takes too long. My phone is just iPhone 4. It's kind of slower, but I like following artists on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I really like Instagram. I think it's really fun, and I think having an iPhone has made me. Has impacted me in my artistic life in a good way because I feel like, wow, I'm a photographer now, and I really think a lot about composition of the photographs I take on Instagram. And I love the filters, and then I love sharing.
But then you have to
online.
spend time with that, right?
Oh yeah, but to me it's like writing a song.
Okay,
it feels it hits all those buttons for me.
It's a good process.
Yeah, it's a good process for sure.
Yeah.
But it's one of those. It's peaceful technology.
It is, and then
it's
you
a
get
robot
that,
friend.
You get that those strokes, you get the likes, and that keeps you going. I never understood why people took selfies, and then I saw that Robinson Cook never took a selfie of himself, my friend on Facebook, and then he finally put a selfie. He's like, what's the big deal with all these selfies? And he got all of a sudden 200 likes and 50 comments, and I'm like, oh, that's why. They, they get immediate.
You get a little love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked about high schooler Kelly, but I'm wondering if you could go back and talk to kindergartner Kelly, what would you tell her?
Oh, kindergartner Kelly. Wow. I don't know. Kindergartner Kelly was doing great. I think kindergartner. But you know what? My parents had just gotten divorced, and I don't really think I have that great of a memory. I wonder if it was, I was going through some hard things. Because they got divorced when I was 3, and then we moved to Minneapolis, and my mom was a single mom and everything. and I have just like happy memories. And Mom is like, you were like very organized, and it was hard for us, and you really helped. And I'm like, okay, so I don't know exactly, but I would say maybe to like junior high or high school, Kelly, the one who kind of got in trouble and didn't do her homework and didn't care about school and stuff like that, that it's nice to remember or know in the back of your head that there's like greater stuff out there that you don't even know exists, but in terms of kindergarten, Kelly, I'm not sure. Maybe I could have used some of those social skills classes that Everett is getting. Learning about, and I'm not saying that I have Asperger's, but now that I know so much about autism and high functioning autism, I think, wow, I'm pretty smart and I have specialized interests, and I got into trouble when I was in high school and junior high and got in some weird situations. And maybe I could have used some of that social skills training, just flat out. They tell you exactly how to like not have certain kinds of space, get in people's face, how to respond, how to do things the right way. And when girls have autism spectrum, they can be little juvenile delinquents, and they can mimic how others are so that you just can fit in. But it's like acting, and sometimes actors are on the spectrum. And I don't think I'm on the spectrum really, because I don't have meltdowns. They have some serious meltdowns when sensory things get too much. But it's interesting. Definitely some social skills would probably have helped smooth my way.
Just think of all the artistic people in visual arts and music who are meltdown prone, and who probably are farther on down that spectrum.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Now that people are learning more and more about the autism spectrum, it's basically you have your sensory, highly sensitive to a lot of inputs, and, give yourself permission to like not go to a party or just not go to a noisy place if it's going to drive you bonkers. And then the meltdowns, how to handle those. Or a lot of people drop out of college because they're super smart, but they get lost, or they can't deal with their roommate, or just weird things are happening and they don't know how to navigate this complex world, and they just can't make it through. Yeah. And if more and more people find out exactly what autism is about, and if they have it, to get those services, or if they're just on the cusp but they don't really have it, but they're PPD-NOS or whatever that is, they kind of almost have all the symptoms but not quite, then they can still get help in this junior high and high school or elementary age. It's fascinating, all the services that Everett gets. Like, wow.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
Thanks, Don and Jonathan.
Did you have fun?
Yeah. I was just reflecting on how I always want to call you guys Jonathan and John, but...
Yeah, that's our...
you can do that if you want.
That's
Thanks,
what they
Don.
call us in the National Enquirer. We're like... like Benifer or what's
Jonathan.
Brangelina.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for listening, and check out Kelly Newcomer online, and yeehaw! Good
Yow.
night. Bye.
Creativity.